Hey, hello, and how are you? This is the Coach Scott Fields, and we're with another edition of the Coach Scott Fields Show. That Rockwell timepiece says it's time, so come on in and stay a while. You're about to get coached up with another edition of the Coach Scott Fields Show. I continue to be a Rockwell brand ambassador, and if you go to rockwelltime.com and use the code COACH20, you receive 20% off of any order there at that website. They've got wonderful looking watches. They've got great looking gear and merch. Go check that stuff out and let them know the coach sent you. Like and follow the Coach Scott Fields Show on our Facebook page. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for outstanding content with tremendous guests just like we have here today. But also hit that bell when notifications will let you know when these shows have been uploaded. If you're listening to us in podcast form, my man Tom and I say turn that knob up. We're about to put that flavor in your ear. Watch us on DBTV Monday through Fridays and also Saturday afternoons. And thank you to our 400,000 loyal viewers daily. And thank you for the opportunity to be seen in 300 million households around the globe. Also, check us out on CSTV on Wednesdays and also the Rewind Sports 60. No matter how you consume us, I am grateful for your continued support. My man, Tom Geyer, is on the show today. We're just a couple Indiana boys who have migrated out west. But, Tom, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you, Scott. Really appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Man, being a couple Indiana boys to talk some Indiana basketball, this is going to be a lot of fun.
It is. It is. When running into you with watching your son play basketball here in Durango, lots of fun. Being out here in Utah and in Colorado, it's great to try to bring a little Indiana flavor to these folks who do a lot more skiing and mountain biking than say we do in the flatlands back in the Midwest.
That's right. We where we grew up, there's nothing but cornfields and crows. But out here in these mountains, man, I'll tell you what, it's something to behold.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about that. Indiana, you were a standout star at Lawerence North and still have some records that probably stand today. I mean, blocking shots and playing and being an Indiana All-Star. Take us back to those formative years at Lawerence North. Talk about your coach and talk about how basketball helped mold and create life lessons for you that you still practice today.
Going back, I think one of the great things in about basketball for me is that after I was born, 2 months old, I got spinal meningitis, which caused a significant hearing loss, and I still wear hearing aids to this day. Actually, legally deaf in my left ear. Basketball was a way to connect for me, and as a young kid, when you're different, for me, wearing hearing aids, having to wear a big old sweatband to try to keep the sweat out. Back then, I had a lot more hair than I do now.
I'm with you.
It was a great way to connect, and I was fortunate enough that I had an older brother and a dad that both played, and I got to learn a lot of things. My brother was 8 years older, so I really got to learn and watch a lot. And then, fortunate enough, by the grace of God, to have good size, good talent, and was able to use that and really connect with people, and that kind of helped me be kind of a comfortable person because a hearing loss was something to overcome and deal with. And then I was fortunate enough that as I got good or better at basketball, my parents decided to move us over to Lawrence Township and played for the legendary Jack Kiefer, who just retired after like what, 48 years, 47 years, some long amount of time. And interestingly enough, one of our managers in Indiana and a friend of mine, Chris Giffen, took over the program there at Lawerence North. But Lawerence North, what a storied tradition with Eric Montross and Greg Oden, Mike Conley, John Stewart, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He passed away while playing there. But just an unbelievable basketball school, and really set the expectation for having to uphold a standard, which was really helpful in going to IU, even though I was not anywhere near the star in Indiana. Having the standard of Lawerence North and having to understand that you were a part of a much bigger program, not just a kid for that year, but just really a great time, and a lot of life lessons. Coach Kiefer, tough guy, defensive minded, and I mean, his record speaks for itself. In Indiana, Hall of Famer for sure, should be many times over, but just an all around wonderful experience getting to play there at Lawerence North.
And I appreciate you sharing that because there's something truly special about Indiana basketball. It's a different culture in the high school. When I played, of course, there was no classification and just competing. But having coming from that tradition and playing for a legendary coach that had been very successful, you mentioned the hearing aid. And let's be honest, kids can be brutal. Was there a lot of bullying that went on when you were wearing it? I mean, were there comments being
Yeah,
made or
but
did
kids are kids, and it's
right?
funny because some of the kids that I've gotten to through the process of not only what happened when I was a child, but also then obviously what comes to be, what I'm sure we'll talk about with Indiana with the firing of Coach Knight, reconnecting with people and growing up and maturing. Um, even on my part, has been a huge life lesson in learning that kids are kids, and trying to. I've got a daughter who's going between seventh grade and eighth grade right now, playing basketball, loving it. But trying to work through that. Middle school is a tough time, trying to transition in high school. Um, Fortunately, again, just the ability to play basketball was a real connecting point for me, in something that I'll always appreciate and value, and just so much as about Indiana high school basketball. My wife grew up. I met her after I moved to Lubbock with Coach Knight to go down to Texas Tech, and we went back while my mom was sick, and we went back several times, and happened to be Mike Conley and Greg Oden were both playing in Lawerence North, and my wife growing up in Texas, it's football. It's Friday Night Lights, it's all those things, and the football stadiums are incredible in these small towns. We go back to a game at Lawerence North, and it was eye opening for her as to what basketball means to the people of Indiana, and to the state. And lucky enough, and when I was in high school, people like Peyton Manning would come to the game. Just really a lot of fun in that respect.
Yeah, and there's a true I believe this growing up in that environment. There's a true sense of community around the sports, but especially basketball. I mean, towns will close down and basically support, just like they do in Texas with their football. But man, just to have crowds of 4,000, 7,000, coming in on a Friday and Saturday night to support their teams, and every barber shop the following morning, everybody's talking about it. The coffee shops, there's just something special about Indiana high school basketball.
Absolutely. One of my favorite towns, and favorite kids to play against, and was fortunate enough to do a lot of different summer basketball, whether it be in the Indiana junior or senior all-star stuff, was Batesville, Indiana. I mean, Michael Menzer, and that crew, I mean, that town supporting that high school team and that kid, it just incredible. It actually kind of gave me a desire to be somewhat of in a small town. I don't know if Durango's so small anymore; it keeps growing,
Yeah.
but yeah, but that's watching that. You're absolutely right. And my brother, being 8 years older, when he was playing the sectional for those Indianapolis schools, he went to North Central. That was down at Hinkle Fieldhouse, and I don't remember the exact days of the week, but they would close down school. I don't know if it was a Tuesday or Wednesday. You go down there, you spend the whole day at Hinkle watching basketball. I got watching Matt Painter; he's from that era, and just a unbelievable fun time. At least as a kid, I loved it, loved being a part of it. But loved them every bit as much watching it as it was a part of it too.
Oh, I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, the Coach Scott Field Show. We got Tom Geyer here on with us, and we're talking Indiana high school basketball. For me, our small community went to Lewis Cass High School. We had Ted Kitchell, who was an
Yeah.
IU star and standout. His cousin John went to Purdue, them winning a sectional championship clear back in 1978. It showed me how cool it was. And we had the pep band and the cheer block, and just like you said, the whole community, just truly special times. And that ignited a fire in me that showed me, you know what, this basketball is a thing. And you talked about connecting with people, those relationships, unbelievable, the relationships and networking. And just like you're an ice friendship, you come walking up to me in Durango. I'm there to watch my son in the RMAC tournament, and we're sitting there talking, and it's just like how cool that basketball was a bridge for us to have that friendship.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. I mean, for me, not only is it friendships with people like yourself, Scott, that have met outside of playing, but even going back and the kids that you played with, the guys that you played with. For me, when I don't remember the exact year, but they renamed. It's been maybe 4 or 5 years. It's pre-COVID, but they renamed the gymnasium at Lawerence North for Jack Keeper, and fortunate enough to go back to that naming ceremony. And it was a ton of fun, a ton of fun. One of my favorite moments about that, though, is one of my high school teammates, a guy named Kwame James. Kwame was the guy who tackled the shoe bomber on the Air France flight. And I had
Wow.
not seen Kwame, and it was a really special moment for me to reconnect with him. He had just become a U.S. citizen recently, before that event, and just great to catch up with all my teammates that I played with, and especially the guys that I played with my junior year. We made a pretty good run, got beat by Ben Davis, but just so much fun to connect with those guys, see what they're doing as men. Last time, really connecting with them, we were 17, 18 years old, but just such a neat thing to
Yeah.
back and do that. And it was even incredible, though, to have the whole set of people that had played for Jack since,
Wow.
well, Jack was the first, Kiefer was the first coach that Lawerence North ever had. He
Right.
started there when it opened. So it was great, lots of fun.
That's amazing. Love hearing that kind of stuff. I mean, you were selected to the Indiana All Stars. What did that mean when you got the call or got the letter, or did Coach Jack share that information with you? Hey, you've been selected. You're going to be wearing number 5 going against the Kentucky All Stars. Take us to that moment as kind of like a significant time, in your
Well,
development.
I honestly, I don't remember how I found out. I do remember it interesting because I was in that area where I thought I was good enough to make the team. But Scott, a relief. I mean, being real with you, it's just you want to be good enough. You want to be recognized, and I think any kid who is lucky enough to play basketball and do it at a good level wants to feel like they've accomplished something. And getting to do that and play against the All Stars, what a wonderful experience. And then fast forwarding that 25 years to when we did the silver anniversary team, um, right? Just recently, in 22, and getting to reconnect with all those guys. And
Man.
most of them, there were certainly a few guys that were not a part of the All Star team that made the silver anniversary team for the Hall of Fame, but reconnecting with Cameron Stevens, who ended up at Purdue, and Cam and I room together for a lot of the All Star experience stuff, and really just so much fun to do
Oh.
that. The All Star experience itself, lots of fun. We had an iguana issue. Well, some of us got sick, and we ended up like having this whole because back then, at least, the Star was I think the primary supporter, financial contributor of all of that. They made these shirts with iguanas on it, and it was quite the fun. But
I like it. So take us to the time where you first meet legendary and iconic coach Bob Knight. What was that like for you? And take us through, going in and selecting, hey, I'm going to Bloomington.
It was my recollection is we were down in I was playing an AAU game. It might have been for Bloomington Red. Fortunately I was able to play for a lot of great AAU coaches throughout my time from seventh grade all the way through high school. Um, but playing in Assembly Hall and it was an open recruiting period, and so I had a pretty good game, not a ton of points, but I passed the ball well and was doing a pretty good job. I'm kind of a being hearing impaired. I'm a loud person, so I think that caught coach's attention, and he came down and we had a discussion. And what I appreciated about Coach the most is his directness. And he was very blunt and said, "Look, I like you. I think you have something that can help us, but you're not that great. You're gonna. I'd love for you to come to Indiana, but the chances of you playing will be probably fourth, fifth year at best. We'd have to redshirt you. Would love to talk to you more about that." And then, of course, I was a few pounds heavier than Scott. I like to eat in high school a lot, so that was one of the things I had to work on before I was able to come to Indiana. But just I enjoyed Coach's bluntness and directness. It's just something that it was easier for me, and maybe it's because I played for Coach Kiefer and the way he handled things, and but really just it was an honor to meet Coach, but then to have him say that he would like me to come to Indiana was obviously incredible.
I like that myself. I'm one of those no fluff guys myself with my approach, and I feel that great players want to be coached. And it's usually the guys who are mediocre players that have that sense of entitlement and like to be told what they want to hear. But I think players to be held accountable and to know exactly where they stand, anybody can deal with that, whether it's positive or negative. But when there's someone telling you, here's an opportunity, I can create a roadmap and a pathway for your successful career, and this is what we need to do, and you're like, let's go.
Absolutely. And, I was, again, lucky enough that I got to do that not only in high school, but also in college with Coach Knight. And, kind of fast forwarding on you for a second on this topic, watching the kids at Texas Tech. So I was fortunate enough to become a grad assistant the first year,
Guns up,
9 and
baby.
19. Yeah, 9 and 19, the year before Coach Knight gets hired in Lubbock, and we show up and those kids, and we added some role players, some good kids to the team, but far and away the core was about the same as what we had, and with Andy Ellis and Andre Emmett, who unfortunately
Oh,
is no
may
longer
he
with us.
rest in peace. That's right.
Yeah, but and lots of good kids there. But we watching them go from kids who I don't know that they didn't believe, but it wasn't this expectation that, hey, we can win, to, I mean, watching them really grasp that somewhere in Christmas break ish time. And then when we came out in the Big 12 in that first year, we were in Lubbock, and but it was the standard. It was the way the coach taught them, the way he had the expectation of not making mental mistakes, not letting those mental mistakes just be glossed over or
Yeah,
forgotten about.
that's right.
And those kids learning what that meant. And then we went into the Big 12. And of course, Kansas has always been a powerhouse. But back then, Oklahoma State, Texas, and competing and beating a lot of those teams. That was one of the coolest things for me, because in Indiana, there's an expectation of winning, and there's maybe a pressure of winning. But down there in Lubbock, they didn't have that. And
That's
then
right.
to see them get that was magical, to say
Yeah.
really lots of fun. But bringing him to your point, Coach Knight had that roadmap, and his staff with his son and Coach Beard and Coach Byers. Those guys, they had that, and those kids bought into it. Sometimes by choice, sometimes by being walked to the water to drink it, but they did it. And I think they learned that maybe winning is fun, but getting there is not fun or easy all the time. So.
Yeah. I so glad that you share that stuff. I I love your story. And I want to give you flowers for that, because here's a guy who plays 2 years at Indiana. The whole turmoil and state is being turned upside down, the zero tolerance policy, and Miles Brand, make an announcement. And so as a young player in that program, hearing that Coach Knight is, being asked to step down, how traumatic was that for a 20-year-old Tom Geyer who says, I love this guy, I love this coach, I don't want to play for anybody else? What was it hard to kind of digest it all, or could you kind of see it building, but no one really thought it would happen? But I mean, that's an unbelievable moment in Indiana basketball history.
Oh, I'll say this, that event was by far the most traumatic event that's happened to me, and I hope it remains that way. I hope it
Yeah.
remains that
Yeah.
way. Some people who, and if you know me well, my mother passed away early, and to me, losing Indiana was harder for me than even losing my mom. My mom passed away at 61 in 2005 from cancer. Wonderful lady. I couldn't ask for a better mother in the world. And this
Wow.
is no disrespect to her, but the whole loss of that at Indiana is it was huge, and it's because I lived with Dane Fife at the time, and it was hard. It was hard on us as kids, and you're 21, 22 years old, and you're not prepared. You're not educated on how to handle those things.
Yep.
I look back and I made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot of hard lessons. I'm very happy with where I ended up and
That's
going
right.
to Lubbock, and I wouldn't change that in the world. And I love Coach, and still try to check in on Coach and Karen when I can. And but it's been an interesting life lesson to look at that now that I'm 45 and look back and go, at 22, that probably, or 21, didn't handle some of those things so great. But yeah, that was really hard. That was
Yeah.
a hard thing under the microscope. I mean, I think Dane and I had a TV truck outside of our house for
Man.
better part of multiple weeks, and just it was difficult. Um, and at that point, Kirk Haston and I were, I think we were both academic seniors, but athletic juniors. We had no athletic seniors. We had just lost our two leaders, and a lot of other great seniors like Luke Jimenez. We lost two leaders in AJ Guyton and Mike Lewis, um, and so here we were trying to figure out how to handle this. And
Wow.
um, looking at Kirk now, Kirk is a senator, I think a senator, House of Rep in Tennessee. I'm sure he would speak more eloquently and well today, but Kirk was pretty shy back then. And so a lot of that stuff kind of fell on me to handle the media. And it was it was an experience. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was, yeah,
And that's fair. We don't even have to dive into that more, because I just want people to understand that, that's very traumatic. And I can't even imagine the pressures, the peer pressures, the outside pressures, the community pressures, and what are we going to do? And how, I mean, no one knew how to navigate such a traumatic event. And for you to speak on it and share what your feelings and emotions were, because you stood for what you believed, and that loyalty to Coach Knight, to me, is something that needs to be commented on, because not a lot of people, and at that age, to be able to say, no, I don't want to play for any other coach than Coach Knight. And then fast forward, you end up being a graduate assistant with him, with his son. And yeah, everything ends up wonderful, but I just can't imagine those pressures being a young teenager, or in the just what that had to be like when everything, every TV channel you turn on, it's the main story. Every headline in the newspaper, front page, that's the story. And yet you were able to stand on your character and say, I'm not playing for anybody else. That was your choice. And from the outside looking in, I thought you handled it well. I thought you handled it very well.
Well, thank you. And that's the thing that I think I enjoyed about the February 2000, literally almost the last pre-COVID thing we got to do in this world. But 2020 moment with the coach and I going home, going back to Assembly
Oh,
Hall was an opportunity to heal. It was a really healing moment, and as a once I made the decision to go to Indiana, one of my biggest dreams, because of the support that my parents gave me, my dad, and then not only my dad but my mom. I mean, I was a mama's boy through and through, and her being sick, and that's one of the things. I'm going to take a little tangent here, but Coach,
please.
he gets credit for the things that he does for his kids that aren't seen.
Yeah.
Kirk Haston lost his mother while we were playing, and the way Coach handled that to me was incredible. My mom had bad cancer, and what he did to try to make sure that she had access to the doctors that she needed access to. We're not talking about giving money or doing
Right.
anything
Yep.
but it's the way of trying to make sure that the folks had what they needed. I know Jared Odell's family went through a lot, and just a lot of things that were outside. Coach took care of, and for me, I was lucky enough that really continued in Lubbock and at Texas Tech. But kind of coming back to the situation in Indiana, I really was lucky that in 2020 we got to go back and do that, because for me, I always wanted the opportunity to have senior nights. I
Yeah.
knew I was never going to be um, a big scorer. I mean, I played in the mop up time most of the time. Got in a few times, I think, when it counted, but not many. And sat down there and had great times talking with Storm and Norman Ellenberger at the end of the bench, and learning all the things about probably maybe why I ended up out here. Who knows?
Yeah.
But all his New Mexico fun times, but the ability and the loss of not getting to do senior night was probably one of the bigger things for me. And so when we got to go back and to get a chance to walk back across that floor, when they
Wow.
called each one of our names before Coach came out, was really incredibly special.
Yeah.
Outside of marrying my wonderful wife and the birth of our two girls and the things that we've done as a family, some other great experiences as a family. By far, for me individually, that was the greatest moment,
Man.
that day in February of 2020.
I
Just an
I
incredible time.
Tom, I feel your emotion and your pride sharing that story. As you may or may not know, Coach Keith Smart is one of my best friends in the industry, and I have nothing but respect for that man and his character and his family. And to hear him, with our conversations, talk about what it meant to him to go back on that February. I got to catch it on ESPN, but to see all you guys together and the fact that he came back and the way that it was announced, and to hear the crowd erupt at Assembly Hall that hadn't erupted like that in years, and to see the smiles on your guys' faces, and to see Isaiah Thomas, and of course, my high school buddy Ted Kitchell was there, and Randy Whitman was there, Woodson was, I mean, everybody. So to see that moment, and you eloquently call it closure, but I think it was a great chapter too, that Coach Knight was what came back and did that, because maybe it also was healing for him, I hope, because he was the foundation, the culture, and I mean, let's be honest, probably the most popular figure in all of Indiana. I don't care if there's a vice president, whatever. I mean, Coach Knight was the most influential and impactful figure. And you were talking about how he would take care of the players. I remember when Landon Turner had his accident and the things that he did for Landon, and those stories go on and how he took care of his players and helped them find jobs, and just the how he ran that program was always with class and dignity. And we can always question, people will talk personality or the boorish behavior. Come on, man. He ran a great program with academics, was a priority. You were a part of that. And then to go to Texas Tech with him, just the stories are endless, Tom. And I love to have these conversations.
I think I'll share. I mean, we've obviously got quite a more time to talk, but so I'm gonna throw in this story because this is my favorite.
Please.
The most emotionally impactful story for me about Coach Knight and his family and my family and time. And as my mom, as I was at Texas Tech, my mom's health was not good. Her cancer had returned. I don't want to say she was terminal, but it was her days were numbered. And I was fortunate enough to find my beautiful wife down there, and she was starting to learn about this culture of basketball and to be a part of what basketball was at this level and what Coach Knight is and all of this stuff. And as we get sent to Buffalo, New York, which irony of what happened to us against Pepperdine when we were in Indiana, and kind of really the beginning of the end. I hate to say it there, but so we are Tech now. We get sent to Buffalo. I think it was our third year there. My wife and I are in. I can't remember if we were married or engaged at that point. Doesn't really matter. But and I really wanted her to have this experience with my mother, knowing that my mom's days were and being able to ambulate and get around were not long. And and as law school students, not having a lot of money, we were like, well, look, honey, I can, as we were on selection Sunday, it's just so much more dramatic than it is maybe even today back then. But, selection Sunday, it's like, okay, I think I can afford, I've looked at flights. I think I can afford to get you anywhere but Buffalo, New York. And sure enough, we get sent to Buffalo. And so the next day, we're talking about it, and at the scores table as practice is going. And long story short, coach hears this, and basically the whole system changes so that we rent a jet to take the team, but then all the coaches and the wives. And of course, coach came up and asked for me to ask Ashley to go. And the experience of my wife now getting to have that time with my mom when her days were, but to be the daughter-in-law in that situation, it's something that you don't. It has nothing to do with the game of basketball, but it had everything to do with life. And while
Oh,
we were in Buffalo, Coach made a huge deal of it, to that was occurring. He would constantly yell at my mom in a good, fun way across the hotel, and he allowed me to really experience that. And rather than maybe sit in some of the team meetings, I went out to dinner with my mom and family, and was able to do a lot of the things that you really wouldn't do normally as a grad assistant. But he understood the bigger picture, and that's something that, looking back, was so important, because as my mom passed, and now that we have kids, and our firstborn is named after my mother, the ability for my wife to have had that time is just, you can't put a price on it.
wow.
So,
Wow.
but that's what, and those things coach did for so many,
Yep.
and that's one of many things that
Right.
coach did for me. But that was, probably my favorite, just
Man,
that
Tom.
experience in Buffalo. um, to do that and have that time with my family was, just
Yep.
incredible.
Yeah. And see, and Tom, thank you for sharing that, because that's who Coach Knight was. And again, there's hundreds and thousands of stories of Coach Knight doing things like that in a charitable way, because he got family, he understood it, and to be able to allow you the opportunity to have that. And he knew that. He's a very intelligent man, and So to share that, I mean, those aren't the sexy stories, and it's not going to get headlines, but that's who he was. And you look out across the landscape of basketball, that coaching tree of his is everywhere. To see the players that have gone on to do NBA things, or broadcasters, or coaches, or front office executives. I mean, whether you were a manager, a player, a coach, man, he always went above and beyond to take care of his people. And that culture that he created is something that not very many programs had that. And for you to be able to experience that and share that and live that, Tom, that's truly unique and special. And I think it's wonderful that we can, sit here and talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. Extremely blessed. And I love that you brought up the managers. I think being the guy that didn't play a lot, and, really put in a lot of practice time and time in the weight room and tried to push the team in a leadership role in that way as much as I could. Probably annoying some of the main players just because it's like always the little energizer bunny trying to keep them going. That was kind of my job. But the managers, man, the managers in Indiana, even getting ready to come on the show today, Jeremiah Shirk reaches out,
Oh,
I know what type of good stories I'm going to share. And, but, those guys and just wonderful people. And so many of them gone on to do so many things. I mean, Dusty May, look at that story this year. I mean,
wow.
Dusty, manager in Indiana at that time.
Oh,
I
great
mean,
job.
just an incredible, and so proud of Dusty and happy for him. Um, but just,
Lawrence Frank. Look at a Lawrence
yeah,
Frank.
Lawerence Frank, I mean, all these guys that, put in time that, that had every bit, if not more love for the program than the players. I
Yeah.
don't, I'll tell you one funny story. And I don't, Jeremiah, I'm sure could correct me and it probably remembers exactly when it happened. I'm imagining it had to be after a Purdue loss, although I could be incorrect. We could have been after we got beat once by Indiana State, which was not particularly a fun thing to have happen. And Michael Menzer deserves a lot of credit for that one. But um, we had to end up running sprints, and coach had the managers running with us, and we were basically tag team running sprints. You had managers running, kind of tagging in the players. If I recall, I think the players had to run maybe 2 or 3 times as much as the managers, but I mean, it was quite an experience out there. You've got, I think back then we had 17, 18 managers. You've got these managers trying to run sprints with us for nothing that they had done. I mean, they had nothing to do with it. It was 100% the players' fault, but here they are. And, paying the price. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun back then, and those types of things.
Just good stuff. And again, I'd be remiss if I didn't say congratulations on the silver anniversary Hall of Fame moment for you. I think that's awesome. August, I get to go back to Indiana. I'm blessed that I'm going to be inducted into the Indiana Sports Hall of Fame on Friday. We get to speak, and another close personal friend of mine, Coach Joby Wright, is going to be there. I heard Coach Dan Dockage is going to be there. So again, to be around those people and to hear their stories, and just to share fond memories, like what we're sharing today. I mean, this is truly what basketball has done for you and I. And to say that, yeah, we're follically challenged, but man, have we been blessed at
Yeah.
what we've done with through the game of basketball, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Scott, I think the other thing that's great about basketball is adversity, and I think that's something I'm watching. Coach my daughter. I'm lucky enough. I've got a gentleman named Drew Peterson who shares a lot of the same philosophies that I do in coaching. And I don't know, the girls sometimes are lucky or maybe cursed that they have dad coaching, because we push them. But I think it's the adversity to go through, whether it's practice, but also learning how to lose. No one wants to lose. Now, if you're a competitor, no one wants to lose. But unfortunately, in life, you do lose. I, as an attorney, I don't want to lose anything, but it happens, and you have to learn how to handle that. And I think that's one of the great things about basketball and competitive sports, not the ribbon giving sports, but competitive sports where
Yeah,
it's 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 not okay to lose, but life does go on.
that's right.
The sun does come up the next day. It doesn't. Life isn't over, but you do have to pick yourself up off the floor, as they say, and either work harder or try a different tact or whatever.
I
I think
love that.
that's I think that's one of the great things at basketball and in any competitive sport, frankly,
Yep. Yeah.
when you where you struggle. Is it teaches you that ability to have some resilience.
Amen. Losing builds character. Just don't be a cartoon. And to me, if when there is a loss or a setback, that's a great teachable moment because what did we learn from this lesson? And when you're able to make it applicable to life, to business, to, whatever you want to do, I think that's truly a reward. And I'm glad you're sharing that. But Tom, what are some other lessons or mantras of Coach Knight that still stick with you even in your law practice today? Does his voice ever resonate in your mind when you're, preparing for litigation or, something's coming up? Do you ever hear his voice kind of resonate in your ear to be like, oh, I'm doing it just as Coach Knight prepared me? How
Well,
about that?
everybody's seen this quote. Anybody who's a basketball fan of Indiana or followed Coach Knight, I mean, he's got so many quotes. Some of them better than others. There's some people, but um, what the willingness to prepare and the need to prepare for whatever it is, whether it's for me going into court or meeting with a client, making sure I understand what's going to happen, try to look at the different possibilities. In kind of coach's way was more of I think he talked about this, the power of negative thinking, in a way of trying to say, okay, where can things go wrong and how do we cut those off at the pass, as is one of his ways of looking at things. And a lot of that had to do with defense and scouting other teams and trying to figure out, okay, well, how are they going to exploit us, how do we stop that. um, and but I think the biggest thing that life lesson from coach was the responsibility as players to think in a game under critical pressure situations.
Ooh,
What I mean by that is that I think so many people viewed, and I had a person who was down in Lubbock who was watching and kind of studying coaches coaching for a year, and he made this statement, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of, "Coach is so old school, he's so far ahead of his time." And what he meant by that was that most coaches set up plays, set up for formations, or put kids in or players in different positions, and whether obviously in the pro game a lot of screen and roll and trying to force through a lot of different stuff in the defense. But with Coach Knight, it was more, okay, here are rules. Here are rules. You got a center line down the court. Typically, if you're the closest one to the center line, you're screening the one furthest away from the center line. Unless, for example, maybe if AJ Guyton's in near the center line and I'm out on the wing, we're not having me shoot the ball, so that becomes a flare screen, and but those rules and the requirement to have to make decisions on the fly all the time and for 40 minutes a game, and then to be critiqued for how those decisions were made and carrying that forward into whatever it is in life. I think it's the ability, if you look at coaches, players, by far and away, their ability to think, analyze, and do things under pressure without really feeling the pressure because they're used to not running, hey, A goes to B to set the screen. It's, well, what am I seeing here? Well, I'm trying to dribble the ball and not have a guy steal the ball. I've got to figure out, okay, where am I going to go with this? So then I got to figure out where to go next. And I think that's the thing that was, again, so old school. People looked at it and was like, wait a minute, he's running this motion offense, which a lot of people like to try to emulate. But it was, he put the ball in the hands of 18 to 22-year-olds, and yeah, he was coaching and critical and trying to get them to always be the best. But those kids, the guys on the floor, who made the decision, it wasn't him on the sidelines.
Yeah, and see, I like that because what I hear, Tom, is, of course, the preparation, the attention to detail, to be able to perform under pressure, and then what are your counter moves if this happens? And again, all in a pressure environment, and with the repetition that you had, and the coaching or critique of that play of your decision. Yeah, he's gonna help you be able to perform under pressure to where that pressure is now easier because the practices are 100 times harder than a game situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. And you do it over and over and over again. But whether it doesn't matter what you do in life, it teaches you, it sets you up, whether it's Kirk Haston, dealing with legislature issues, which, it's got to be interesting in the state of
Oh,
Tennessee, or, it's say another one of my teammates, I think a lot of my teammates have gone on to be either salesmen or drug reps. You got to be prepared to know who you're going to be going talking to, and make sure that you can answer the questions that they have, hopefully before they even ask them, so that you get that rapport created and close the deal. Or being in my situation where trying to be able to explain what's happening in court to and again, Durango being a small town, our judges here, we're lucky enough that they have to hear a wide variety of things, and but be prepared to be able to present facts, evidence, and the law to them. All of it's the same concept of
yeah.
preparation, just repeated in different ways.
Yeah, a lot of applicable principles in daily life. And I think that's wonderful that you're able to have the foresight, you're able to be able to, know and understand your role in your preparation for what you're doing, with your business and the success that you're having. I think it's just phenomenal conversations. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we got Tom Geyer here on with us. He's an attorney at law in Durango, Colorado, Indiana standout player, graduated from Texas Tech. Love the things we're sharing here today on the Coach Scott Field Show. Let's share. I'm going to give you the opportunity to share more stories. Share some fun locker room stories. Share some fun bus rides, or trips. To going to a Big 12 game or something. Talk about some of those fun stories that would never be told or never heard about until now. What were some of
I
them
mean,
fun stories?
the fun stories, I think, from you go out. We had a particular practice one day where, and I don't remember which one of us, but the you miss a jump shot as a player, you're particularly upset, and you begin to curse because you missed a jump shot. And of course, no one curses if they miss a block out or throw a stupid pass or do any of that. And so one particular day, coach had just had enough, and so we ran some sprints up and down the steps of Assembly Hall, and I,
that's that's a lot of
the
steps.
higher you get, the steeper those things get. I can assure you of that.
Yeah.
But the entire time we're doing it, running around screaming cuss words and uh, having to do that. I mean, one of my favorite other manager stories is one of the managers. The managers filmed everything. You got the whole, and it's a little different now. Camera technology is more readily available and easy to use. Back then, in Indiana, being fortunate that we had really nice cameras for filming practice. And one particular day, one of the managers did not quite clip the camera into the tripod. And as just talking about the steepness of Assembly Hall, they're up top, camera comes rolling down the stairs. And those types of things. I love at Texas Tech. I loved Andre Emmett's willingness to take it to coach. I obviously miss Andre being with us and
Yes.
on.
What a
Boy,
player.
he
What an
just
athlete.
he was an incredible player, but he really had no issue with challenging coach. I remember a particular game, Andre had an easy, wide open path to the basket for a dunk, and instead took 2 dribbles back to take a 3-pointer. And I'm announcing the game on TV, and at that time I wasn't maybe as polished with my wording as I should be now. But made a comment about that as I watched Coach get up, watch shot go in, Coach sit back down, and Andre, it was like if you make it, you're a hero. If you miss it, you're coming out. And,
Yes.
but that was but again, just so many of those wonderful things. The time, I think that's the thing as an athlete that I end up missing is the time with the guys in the locker room. Now, there's the camaraderie that comes with that. And I think that's part of the tragedy and the hard part for me is it was just suddenly so over when Coach got fired. I was there for I think a couple more weeks, and ultimately came to a decision with the university to go a different direction because of my loyalty to Coach and disdain for Miles Brand and his decision and rather vocal nature of the way I expressed that. But to missing that with those guys, really, I think as you get older and you look back, and for me now being a dad, one of my favorite things in coaching these girls, I love taking them on road trips and letting them go. Being in Durango, we go down to Albuquerque a lot to play in these tournaments, and letting the kids have those moments in the hotel, go through that experience as a group, and just magical. Even in 6th, 7th graders, now it's the same 18, 20, and it's the same as guys go on a guys trip or girls going on girls trip. It's just, those are magical things. And I think that's the part that I miss looking back and being in the pressure cooker together. But gosh, yeah, lots of fun stories and times. It was interesting because I shifted from being the player to kind of a grad assistant and looking at it differently at Texas Tech and watching how some of the things work there. I mean, you probably, Scott, you've been around, you remember the old cowboy remotes. Well, at Tech, they didn't have one. And I tried to explain to the people there that they needed to get a cowboy remote because Coach doesn't work with a remote that uses infrared or that remote didn't last very long, and surely quickly in our time in Lubbock, we ended up with the same cowboy system that they had at Indiana. But
There you go.
yeah,
Love it. Love it. Tom, this has been just wonderful. Thank you for your time and sharing your stories and sharing your experiences, but yet also letting people know the character and just, again, nothing but respect and love for you and your beautiful family and the things that you're experiencing. And just can't thank you enough for being a part of the show today, my friend. Thank you so much.
thank you. And I think I really want to thank and I know I've said this to them privately, but I really want to thank Coach and his family, Karen, Pat, Tim. Was just so blessed to get to be almost an additional family member in a way, and just such a beautiful thing to have happen, and so lucky to be where I am and blessed that I've had the opportunities and the experiences, both good and bad, that I've had in my life. But thank you, Scott, for having me. So happy we ran into you. Love seeing the highlights about Brandon. Looks like he's doing good, and we had love watching him play against Fort Lewis when he was at Adams State, and all those good things.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. He works hard, and just thrilled to have these connections and these relationships and to have this platform to allow individuals like yourself to, share your story. So God bless you, my friend. I appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for another exciting episode of the Coach Scott Field Show, but nothing but love and respect for my man, Tom Geyer, number 53, baby. Go ahead, Tom. I appreciate you. God bless, my friend. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Scott.